Getting camera.
Yeah.
Get on screen.
Okay. 3 more minutes.
So William, what time is it over there?
It's 12:03.
Oh, so
I've only been working for a couple of hours today so far. I went and I picked this up this morning.
Yo, PS5.
Physical copies came out today. I don't know if they're out for you guys today, but they're out here in Australia. So that was
Wow,
pretty cool.
that is crazy cool.
Yeah.
How does it feel to have it in your hands?
Kind of incredible. This is my first game that's had a physical release. So
Wow.
it's pretty sick. And look, it's got like a reversible cover and everything too.
Oh, wow. Couldn't expect less. Love it.
Yeah, it's nice. It's very humbling.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably could have gotten one for free, but it's a bit of a different experience actually walking into the store and buying one, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. You gotta have the true player experience.
Yeah. Plus, I get to brag to the employees there. So
There you go.
Like something a little.
it's 7 p.m. for you, right?
Yeah, around 7 p.m. I will be starting in just a minute.
Yeah, cool. Are the bulk of the people who attend these club meetings like game development students or just generalized students? What's the deal?
There's no like truly a game development like major, but there are like courses
okay.
dedicated into that. So everyone's kind of just a mix of like
Yeah, so we got programmers studying computer science and artists studying arts, animation, people studying for writing, and then just
that's
everyone
cool.
converges in the same space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 7:05, so let's get everything riled up and ready to start. All right,
Great.
everyone. So if you could all direct your attention here today, thank you all for coming today. Today we're having William Mesilane, who works at Massive Monster, give us a little panel and Q&A so you guys can ask your questions and learn more about his career. So first off, thank you, William, for your time. Thank you for coming. Could everyone give him a huge round of applause? All right,
Thank you
William,
so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So my name is Rafael. I'm the president of the Game Development Club at San Jose State University. And
my name's Christian. I am the person that contacted you. Also, thank you again for accepting the interview. And I am the public relations officer for the Game Dev Club. And then we also have someone online.
Hello. Hi, I'm Jasmine. Nice to meet you. I am the club's not me forgetting my role, graphic design lead, and I'll be managing stuff from online today.
Awesome. It's so nice to meet you all.
thank you for your time, William. So to kick things off, maybe could you start by telling us a little sorry. So this is a bit how the panel is going to look like. So first we'll do a little introduction. You can tell us about yourself. Then we can start making some questions about advice, etc. Then you could tell us about your experience working in the games industry. We'll have a little bit of time for panelist questions that we have prepared for you. Then talk a little bit about game development and how you develop your games. How does it look like? And then just some last minute questions from the club, from people online and in person. So let's kick things off. So to begin, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Could you tell us about your career, how it got all started? Can you tell us about all you do?
Yeah, cool. So obviously my name is Will. I am one of the programmers at Massive Monster, working on Cult of the Lamb. I'm sort of transitioning into more of a technical lead role sometime soon. So that's kind of the kind of things that I do. So my career really, and my job is all about the programming side of Cult of the Lamb and a bunch of other things for Massive Monster. So for Coddle, I was responsible for building all of our user interface. So all of that was me when I came on board in October of 2021, quite late in the project, actually. The UI was kind of in a bit of a state and it didn't work very well. It didn't scale. None of it really met the requirements that we had. So I decided to scrap it all and start it from scratch, which ended up paying off because I basically built us a big framework for rapidly building, iterating, and testing menus. Because, well, it's a game about base management and cult management and quite a lot of things, and required a pretty significant amount of user interface. So I think all up we have almost 80 different screens, not including all the various other elements in the game. So I did that. I also work on a lot of, I guess, system level stuff, things that you don't really see that kind of contribute to the stability of the game. All of our system and graphics settings, controls, key bindings, all that kind of fun stuff that people don't usually want to do because they want to, make fun gameplay and implement cool little things instead of worrying about the things that people don't necessarily see all the time. Outside of that, I'm also responsible for our accessibility settings. So one of the big pillars of rebuilding all of the UI from scratch was to enable us to do things like text scaling and various other things for the game that we kind of wanted to do. And so we're sort of continually improving on that as we build out the game. I'm also responsible for DevOps work. So for a really long time, we were doing builds sort of manually up until release, in fact. So if we suddenly needed to put out a new build to QA or queue one up for release to a beta branch or anything like that, someone had to go and click a button and then wait 45 minutes to an hour for its build, which destroys a lot of time and productivity. So because of things that I picked up in previous jobs, we now have a build machine that, picks up changes that you do and does a build of the game for all the various platforms and then distributes it to Steam and GOG all automatically. And that's now saved us probably thousands of hours of dev time over the last 6 months. So that's pretty much what I do for Massive Monster. And I kind of just fell into programming over time as my sort of primary role working in games. I wasn't always a programmer. I wanted to do animation when I was younger, and picked up Flash when I was maybe 15 or so, and then learned that you could do little bits of scripting and stuff, and it sort of went from there. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. And maybe could you tell us a little bit about your preparation? So if you attended college, university, and tell us a fun fact about yourself.
Yeah, so I studied a Bachelor of Design majoring in games at RMIT University here in Melbourne, Australia. That was a 3-year course, but for me, it got stretched into 4 because I'm one of the very fortunate people to have started working about halfway through my degree. So I split up my last year of university into 2, just so I could manage studies and actually having a job, because dropping out and leaving to go work full time wasn't really on the table, as I wanted to finish the degree. And particularly, I'm sure you all understand this, having an actual piece of paper with qualifications on it is good for things like visas or, just in general job applications or something. Even though I've never actually used my degree for anything, it's always handy to have it there, because in case I do want to go work overseas one day or something like that, they're handy. So that was my formal education. Again, nothing about programming in there. There was maybe one class about intro that everyone had to do. So when it comes to all that stuff, I'm self-taught. And I guess a fun fact about myself, I once lived with someone who gave all their money to Nigerian scammers. That was funny. And that's the 100% true. So it's a hell of a story.
Oh my God. That is a crazy fact. Awesome.
Mm.
Well, thank you for helping us get to know you better. So now we could talk a little bit more about your deep experience in the games industry. So could you start by telling us a bit about your humble beginnings? How did you get your foot in the door in the games industry? What was your first job in the games industry? And maybe share a bit about your previews and all your work experiences in games.
Yeah, so I've been working in games for quite a while now. I like to, consider my start being in the really early Flash days when I was probably about 15 years old. Again, like I mentioned before, I spent a lot of time on Newgrounds, if any of you know what that is, and websites like Stick Death and Armor Games and all those kinds of beautiful websites, which are kind of not quite as relevant anymore, which is a bit sad. But anyway, so I began wanting to be an animator or an artist or something to that effect because I used to watch cartoons a lot. Very quickly learned that I wasn't good at it and didn't really want to do it quite as much because I learned you could do very simple scripting with action scripts in Flash and sort of started to gravitate towards making fun little interactive things. So I did that for a little while, just like making lots of things and never really finishing anything and sort of building up the set of skills that you need to, create something. And then eventually there was this collaboration on the Newgrounds forums called 4-Second Firestorm, which was something like 50 developers all came together to make a game that was something similar to WarioWare, where you had 4 seconds to complete a game or you would fail, and then you would sort of move on to the next one and the next one. So I contributed to that, and there was basically a pool of money from the Armor Games sponsorship that was going to get distributed to everyone. And I made $25 US. And now at the time, having never earned any money off of making a game before, that felt like $1 million. So getting a check from America a couple months later with some money on it that I went down to the bank and like handed over to the cashier was kind of an incredible experience. So that's kind of what I consider my start, right? So that was the first time I ever got paid. So I like to say I've been doing games for about 15 years or so now, but in terms of like formal employment, it's been about 10, maybe a little bit more than that. So after doing all that Flash stuff, I went to university. I got in because of all my Flash portfolios. So I was actually quite a bad student in high school, and I didn't have the grades to get into most universities. So the one that I went to was all portfolio based. So I had lots of cool shit to show people. And they sort of looked at that and said, okay, yeah, let's let this guy in. So I did that for a little bit. And someone that I met there, Joe, he runs a studio called Impromptu Games, and he was doing his first game called Influx in Unreal Engine 3. And this is still in the time when Flash was actually pretty widespread in, AAA game engines and, other game engines that were readily available to people. So they all use this middleware called Scaleform, which basically renders like a Flash layer on top of everything, so you can build all of your user interface using, Flash files. So he needed someone to do his UI. I had those skills, and I started working for him. And then that's where that sort of split in my last year of university started. So I did that for a little while. We got chosen for the PAX Indie Showcase in the very first PAX Australia here, which was an awesome experience. That job then rolled on to another one where I got recommended to do the same thing for a game called Primal Carnage Extinction. So they were sort of rebuilding the original version of that game, which was a dinosaur versus humans first-person shooter thing. It wasn't very good. So I did that for about 18 months or so and then quit because I wanted to build my own stuff. Taught myself how to use Unity because it has some similarities to Flash, and made a game for mobile called Harvest, which is a game about farming with terrible health and safety standards. So yeah, I worked on that for a couple of years, released it, and it bombed. I think I got about 2,000 legitimate downloads and I made about $10 off of it. But the real key point of that was actually finishing a game on my own, because I did all the programming and the art and release stuff and everything for it completely by myself. I think the only things that I didn't do were some animation and music. So that ended up getting me a job at a place called Millipede, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Dumb Ways to Die mobile game series. So they used to be the custodians of that brand, and they were sort of in charge of the first couple of games as well as a few other offshoots of that brand before it went to Playside. So I worked there for a while on educational games. So things that were about promoting change. You know, one of the projects I worked on was a game for a country that has a really awful NCD problem. So that's, you know, heart disease, diabetes, you know, all those kinds of issues, to help teach kids traditional cooking and, you know, healthy eating and stuff. So we made a game about, you know, foraging for food and fishing and almost like Cooking Mama style mini games. And it ended up making a bit of an impact when that came out into the schools that it was trialed for. You know, you would take surveys before the game went there and then surveys after to see if the kids actually sort of learned something in this, I think it was 10, 12-week period. And it actually made a noticeable impact. So those are the kinds of things that I worked on there. We worked on a very large scale maths game, which is sadly no longer on the App Store due to who knows what reason, because it was funded by the government. We worked on games that were about getting kids exposed to languages other than English at a really early age. So we would build these really simple games that would get translated into something like 11 or 12 languages all at once, and they all needed, you know, voice actors for all the different countries and special art for different cultural reasons, because you needed to make sure that everything was appropriate, and things like that. And so that job was for a few years. And then when the COVID-19 pandemic started, they had a little bit of trouble getting work. So I was working on some things that I didn't particularly enjoy. So I left that to go work on Pico Tanks, which was sort of just a stopgap until the next big project came along, which was Cult of the Lamb. So like there are things that I've omitted throughout that sort of historical timeline that are just like not really worth getting into too much, but those are sort of the main beats of my career. Sorry to waffle on for a little bit, but that's kind of my road from the start of it to now.
And throughout all of this journey, all of this experience, what would you say has been one of the most fun, like raw fun experiences you have had so far?
Fun. I mean, Millipede was a great work environment. I loved working there because we had an office, and I like to pick on people. So I would sort of just heckle some of the other developers a lot. And I don't know, we were all together in the same room, and it was this really nice collaborative environment, and we all got to sort of own our own pieces of the games that we worked on. And that was great. And I mean, Cult of the Lamb has been fun as well. Like we all thought it would be big, but not quite to the extent that it did end up being. So the last, oh God, I don't know how long it's been since we've launched, 8 months or so, has just been an absolutely wild ride. A bunch of us just went to GDC and PAX East, and PAX East, with the fanfare that we received there and the booth that Devolver put up, was probably like the most fun I've ever had at a PAX. Like we were signing autographs and taking photos with cosplayers, and we had this huge elaborate booth, and yeah, it was wild. It was great.
Next one.
Next week, yeah. I want to go, or should I go?
This is the right one, right?
Yeah, thank you, Will. So now getting a bit more into the game development itself, like the technicals, the tools, the knowledge. So we know you're a game developer, but can you go a bit more in depth in general, where your skill set goes, and how did you hone this skill set, and how did you improve on it?
Yeah, so I mean, my skill set really is I enjoy programming quite a lot, and just sort of building stuff, because I've always sort of thought of making games, and in particular doing all the code for it, as like you're kind of putting together a puzzle while you're also building the pieces for the puzzle at the same time. So you kind of get to sit there and figure out how everything fits together and sort of design stuff as you go. And I sort of hone that skill set by, I like to try and surround myself with people who are smarter than me so I can learn from them, as well as going out of my way to just constantly learn stuff. And I think a big part of that is I don't really just work for Massive Monster. I do my own work as well. So I have my own little studio, which I try to make games for. And I'm currently, at the moment working on some tools for Unity. And, it's just this constant process of just always building things and trying to improve and saying, okay, how can I do this better next time? And at the moment, it's starting to get into things like design patterns for code and sort of trying to, formalize structure a little bit more, things like that. And yeah, just going out of my way to constantly try and do new stuff is kind of how I do it. Sorry, I'm seeing a question in the chat about what did I learn at GDC. So funnily enough, I didn't actually go to any talks at GDC. I was too late to get a cheaper pass, so I didn't bother going to anything. I just went to the expo hall. For us, GDC was more about like a victory lap. So we went there and sort of met heaps of developers and talked to folks and networked and went to lots of parties and stuff. So I didn't really learn much. I mostly just met people and hung out and did lots of cool stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. And could you also tell us a little bit about, so here we are all hobbyists, some are in school, some are working, but we're trying to get in the games industry. So could you tell us about some key differences from making this leap from working in your own projects, in small hobby projects, game jams, and doing the leap of working in the industry? What are the key differences between working in games for fun or for yourself and then jumping into the industry?
So key differences between working for yourself and working in the industry. Deadlines are always a big one. There's always something that needs to be done. I think when you're working on personal projects, maybe not so much game jams because they inherently have deadlines. It's very easy to sort of just meander around and not really get anything done. So one of the key differences is that you have to be delivering stuff quite regularly. And that's going to depend on how the particular business operates, whether you can play things quite loosely and they have lots of time and resources for things, or whether they're a small company who needs to get stuff done quite quickly. So for example, when we were in the final stretches of making Cult of the Lamb, there wasn't always necessarily time to make our code or our assets or anything quite as well put together as sometimes I would like. And that means I have to take shortcuts or other people have to take shortcuts so we can get things done in time. And the other big difference is that you're not always working on something that's yours or something that you particularly care about. So I'm a firm believer in that you don't have to have a huge investment in the project that you're working on to do good work. So I think you'll find, particularly in smaller companies or companies that do client work, such as ones that I've worked on in the past, like Millipede, you just work on things that you kind of hate or don't really want to work on. So you kind of have to separate that kind of part of your brain that wants to be really passionate about the thing that you're working on and just do the work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Then maybe could we go to the next one? So now going a bit more into general advice for us who want to get started in the games industry, get our foot in the door. So first question is, how can programmers and artists take that next step into becoming a professional in the games industry? What would be your key advice to do so?
Honestly, I think you just kind of need to make stuff. So for example, when I went to university, we built a bunch of games and did a bunch of mod work and things like that, but I've never actually used any of them to get a job. So unless your degrees are, completely geared towards you are working towards getting a job at the end of this, which I don't think many are, because no degree or course can guarantee you a job once you're finished. And that's very silly if anyone ever says that. You need to be doing things outside of that and trying to find a way to stand out. So if you're someone who's trying to get a job and you've just finished your degree and all you have is basically the checklist of stuff that you did while you were there, then how do you stand out against the person next to you who has that exact same checklist of stuff that might look slightly different? And for me, that was working on my games outside of that, or working on my games outside of the jobs that I have, because those are the things that helped me in particular get a job over other folks who didn't. So I think the percentage of people who actually went on into the games industry from my particular course is like incredibly small. I think maybe 50 of us graduated and 3 or 4 of us actually work professionally in games now. It's not very much. So yeah, it's really about putting in some extra effort to make things outside of what you're studying, and put the effort into the things that you care about the most. And that doesn't mean crunching your life away outside of school to do that stuff or anything. It can just be like a little bit here and there. But I definitely think that people need to go sort of beyond what they're studying to make themselves stand out a little bit.
Thank you. And in terms of like navigating the games industry and presenting yourself and applying for jobs, do you have any advice in terms of building a resume, cover letters, maybe making connections in the games industry and all of that in general?
Yeah, so I definitely recommend making a good portfolio and making it nice and visually appealing, which I mean is not easy for everyone because not everybody is a designer, right? Making sure that you can just sort of like display all of the things that you've worked on one page where you can sort of just see what they've worked on at a glance. If you've got an online portfolio, make sure it works on mobile as well and isn't a thing that you have to like scroll in and search for to try and see the content. For example, my portfolio, if you bring it up on a mobile device, it has an entirely separate layout just for working on a phone, because you can't expect every interviewer or every single person who's looking at your portfolio or your resume to spend more than 5 minutes checking it out. So if you don't have something there that's immediately like passable, then they're probably just going to ignore it. When it comes to resumes, I mean, that's kind of subjective. I've been hearing from some other people now that some automated HR systems where you actually apply through like a website will use like AI algorithms to get sort of past the minimum required level of understandability of what's on your resume before it actually goes on to a real human. I don't know how accurate that is, but it sounds like a thing that's probably going to happen soon. So making sure that everything is really easy to read and presents well on a resume. I like to do one page and keep it as succinct and concise as possible is good. Whenever I apply for a job, and I've gotten a really good response rate out of this, I send a resume, a cover letter, which basically just talks about me a little bit and why I'm excited about the job that I'm applying for and why I think the studio is a good fit for me and why I think I'm a good fit for the studio. So I add that, but I also add a PDF version of my portfolio to that as well. So it's kind of like a custom layout themed exactly the same way that my portfolio is. Links to everything. So every single screenshot, you can click on it and find a high-res version on the internet. All your socials, everything like that. Make sure you can actually like click through it and have shortcuts through the document and everything. Just because I thought it was a good idea to do it, and it seems like it has, because I get like a 90% response rate from interviews when I try and send something through, even if it's like a no. But most of the time it has like gone on to the next step. So that's what I like to do for actually applying for a job.
Thank you. And then in terms of getting started in the industry, do you know of any roles that would be a great fit to just get started? For example, gameplay engineering internships, or what are some good positions that students should be looking for when starting to want to get in the games industry?
Yeah, look, I always think about this, and it's like people say, oh, you should start in QA and then work your way up or whatever. But I think that's dumb. because first of all, I kind of hate working in QA because QA is boring to me. But if you have a role that you want to be getting into, just apply for them. If you see a job application ad that has however many years of experience or a bunch of technology on it that you don't know, but you fulfill like 70% of what's on there, just go for it, because, you know, what have you got to lose? What's the worst they could say? They just say no. Like, no one's going to call you stupid or anything. So just go for it. If you have a role that you want to do, so if you want to be an engineer, if you're just starting out, probably it's better to apply for a junior or a intermediate one if you haven't really worked too much. But if you say I do have experience, you can apply for, you know, like the higher level ones. You don't need to have worked in games to do that either. You can be an engineer elsewhere for a, you know, someone who just makes software or whatever, and then step into a higher role at a games company. Not easily, because it will be a bit different, but, you know, don't sell yourself short. Know your experience and just go for it. That's what I think anyway. I don't think you should use one role as a stepping stone to get to another role.
Awesome, thank you so much. So now we'll move a bit more into general panelist questions that we have prepared for you. So to kick it off, we were wondering, what do you think of it being possible to break in the gaming industry without necessarily having a computer science or related degree as an engineer? What do you think about that? Or having basically in something different than a role that you get started with?
Yeah, you can absolutely get a job in the games industry, or like working as a programmer or an artist without a degree. Like, I think when it comes to art in particular, your portfolio says more than your education. You can be like the best artist in the world with no degree and still get hired. That's totally fine. And if anyone says otherwise, they're wrong. Again, like before, having a degree is useful if you want to go work overseas. So it becomes a problem then when it comes to visas and actually being able to work somewhere. So you need it for that. But honestly, I've never done a programming course in my life. As I mentioned before, my degree was a Bachelor of Design, and I've been working as a programmer primarily for 6 or 7 years now. Never once outside of an intro to programming course have I learned formalized programming. So I'm entirely self-taught with that. And my portfolio is what speaks volumes about my ability to do the work. So yeah, you don't need education.
I'm so glad that you.
That's it. I'm advocating for you all just to quit. Just quit.
Drop out.
Yeah.
If any of your teachers are here, I'm sorry.
Awesome, thank you so much, Will. And we were also wondering a little bit about, you spoke a lot about your portfolio and showing all of your games and your experience. So how big, basically, if you could quantify how many games, projects, etc. you had in your portfolio, what do you think should be an appropriate size for it to be good enough to be like, okay, I'm ready? Or it just should be something you work on every day?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to portfolio and thinking in terms of like size, it's quality over quantity. You could have worked on one game and it be amazing and all of your work be amazing in it, and that's better than 5 shit things in there. So you should never put something in your portfolio that you're not happy with, or that you're not proud of, or that you're putting in there just for the sake of putting in there. I think I've taken out a bunch of projects that I had in my portfolio a while back because they're just not good enough, right? You want to be putting your best foot forward at all times. Otherwise, there's just going to be bloat in there that people don't need to see. So like, I can't give you a number because there is no number. When I was applying for jobs at Millipede, I think I had 3 games in there, and that would have been Influx, Primal Carnage, and Harvest, and that was more than enough. Massive Monster is a bit of a different story because I got my job because I know one of the directors, and I was looking for work at the same time that they were looking for someone, so the stars kind of aligned for me with that. So I'm very lucky, and I also understand that I'm very privileged in that regard. So yeah, when it comes to portfolios, just put everything that you think is really, really good in there. And you need to be really critical about your work as well. Like if you think it's bad, don't put it in there. If you're not proud of it, don't put it in there. If it looks really rough, probably don't put it in there.
Awesome, thank you so much. And we were also wondering about any problems you have encountered in your journey. What has been one of the biggest hardships you have found, and how do you overcome it?
Oh, look, for me, I mean, everybody has their own struggles and their own ways into the industry. Like everybody's journey is unique, and for me in particular, I had to work quite a lot of jobs when I was studying because I had to live out of home due to some unfortunate personal life things. So I was juggling studying and working a part-time job, working in a delicatessen in a supermarket to pay the bills, while also trying to work on these projects that ended up getting me jobs later down the line. So understanding how to manage that stuff was a big one for me. In Australia, we also don't have too many game studios than what you would have in the States. Like we have 2, maybe 3 AAA offices here, and one of those is Sledgehammer and another one is EA. So they're like the really big ones, but they're all over the place for you guys. So actually finding open positions without having to move overseas for us is quite hard. So that's always a challenge, but I don't know. I am very, very lucky to have been able to get the work that I have over the years. So it's a little bit hard to give advice on that or describe it without just talking about myself and my personal problems for a little while.
Awesome, thank you so much for sharing. And a bit of a follow-up question on that. So how do you keep yourself motivated and running all the time, especially when working in a long project or a stressful project? What keeps you going?
So this is going to sound maybe kind of mean, but you don't need motivation to work. You need discipline. If you are unhappy with the thing that you're working on, but you have to work on it, then, well, you kind of just have to keep going, particularly if it's a project like, say, something that you're actually really passionate about, like Cult of the Lamb. You know, there are times when I'm working and I don't really want to work, but I kind of have to keep going. And you know that, like, at the end of the road, there's going to be something good. So you kind of just have to power through it. And even on personal projects as well, like, I know so many people who just start stuff and then never finish it because they just don't really have the discipline to keep going. And I mean, you can drop things if they're not working or they're kind of bad or whatever, or pivot. But I think there's a lot to be said about actually pushing through and finishing something. You're always going to get to that point where you're like, I'm sick of this project. I don't want to work on it anymore. Working on something new is very exciting and energizing and you want to do it, but sadly, you've got this other thing that needs to be worked on, particularly if you're being paid to do it. You kind of just have to push through it and keep working. You can't be excited and motivated 100% of the time. It's just not possible.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So then I think with that done, then we can just move to some general Q&A. So if it's okay, we'd like to open up the mic to people on the Game Development Club in person or online
definitely.
to ask you questions. So we're going to be alternating. So would anyone in person like to come over and ask William a question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'll
come over.
just throw in whilst people are giving stuff in person, if you're online, if you have any questions, feel free to like plop it in the chat and I could like say it for you. Or I think there's also like a Q&A button that I've like never used before. Maybe that'll work too. We'll just see how it goes.
Do
Yeah,
I still draw? Sorry, I just saw the message pop up in the chat. So do I still draw? I do. Whenever I have to do UI work for Cult of the Lamb, if it's a new screen that needs sort of a new layout or a new design, I definitely still have to put a little bit of pen to paper and try and rough something out because I do a little bit of the design work, but really that's nothing more than, I wonder if I've got any drawings here. I don't think I do. It's nothing more than just like crappy little scribbles like this, you know, like I just have a notepad next to my desk all the time that's just got like little things. See, I think this is me roughing out a skill tree for something at some stage, you know. Yeah, a little bit. Who's next?
I want to learn more about your studio, your personal studio. I think the one where you published Harvest. I was wondering, like, why did you want to make Harvest? What was the process of creating the game, and what was it like to finish a game and publish it?
Yeah, so I wanted to make Harvest because, funnily enough, it's a game that I made in Flash many years ago when I did that collaboration 4-Second Firestorm. It's kind of roughly based on that idea. It was about like a little guy on a unicycle who had to outrun a combine harvester for some reason. And I thought that would just be like a fun little one-button mobile minigame thing. And at the time, the project that I was working on, like as my full-time job, I wasn't particularly happy with. So I finished working there and I said, okay, what am I doing now? I don't have a job. I have a little bit of money. I'm going to teach myself how to use Unity because we were all using Unreal Engine. So I picked that up and said, okay, this is the game that I'm going to make. This is a project to both make something for myself and to learn a new technology. And that's I think a really great way to do that. And I pretty much use Unity every day now after doing that. And I mean, the ultimate goal, and I mean, everybody's ultimate goal, right, is to make their own games and run their own studio and hopefully not have to work for anyone ever again, right? So maybe one day that'll still happen. So I have that kind of company in the background that I like to release stuff under. And in terms of what was it like actually building a game by yourself and releasing it, it's really hard. It's really, really hard when you do it by yourself because you have to manage so many different things. I wish I had someone who would just make art for me now on my personal games because I hate doing it. I mean, like 3D modeling is fun and everything, but when you're doing it sort of like in a bubble that's just you, it's like it blocks the other things that I would rather focus on, which is all the programming things. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, thank you. I have one more question. What are some topics in game development or technology that you are like interested in or interested in learning about today?
What topics or technologies am I interested in today?
Or like maybe even gameplay styles or a certain, like maybe you have a game you have in mind even?
I mean, like it's tough because I play obviously a lot of games, so I'm interested in lots of different things. I don't really have one particular thing that I'm interested in. At the moment, I want to get into more console-centric work. So the Cult of the Lamb, we have a porting company that does a lot of our porting for us, and I would like to learn how to do all of that myself. And thankfully, the success of the game has enabled us to start, you know, learning a bit of this stuff. And that's not saying that we're going to be doing it all ourselves one day, but having exposure to, you know, console SDKs and their dev kits and all of the things that are involved in that ecosystem is something that I'm quite keen to get into now. No worries. I'm just going to answer the question that's in the chat, which is how involved am I in other aspects of game development, such as game design, art direction, or writing? So I would say the only other aspects that I'm really involved with, particularly for Massive Monster, would be like contributing to very, very tiny bits of game design, right? So my forte is almost strictly programming and UI related things. So I do like UI design a little bit, and we all give feedback and present ideas for what we want to go into the game. So there's definitely been many arguments before release about how certain things should go. So I like to say I contribute a little bit more to game design than anything else. So yeah, that's probably it.
I actually have a follow-up to that question.
Sure.
You mentioned that you're involved in like a little bit of game design, but do you also find yourself communicating frequently with departments outside of programming, or is that something that's like, oh yeah, that's the producers like thing to deal with?
No. We all talk all the time, right? If you don't speak to everyone, then that's very bad. Producers are good at facilitating that sort of stuff and making sure timelines are on track and all of those things. But if you use a producer as an intermediary between disciplines, that's not a good sign. But also in our case, in particular, Massive Monster is a very small company. When we shipped Cult of the Lamb, we were 6 people. Now I think we're 11 or 12. So we have room to be able to just effectively get up and walk over to another desk and like tap on someone's shoulder, although it's more like go to their DMs in Slack and say hi, because we all work remotely. But no, we all talk to each other all the time, and ask for things and bicker about stuff, and it's great.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Will?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So, my question is about the game itself. Like,
Yeah, sure.
I'm a big fan of Cult of the Lamb and stuff like that. So it's really cool to have, meet you and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think my question is, I saw like in the Steam post, you guys are putting, I think it was called Relics of the Old Faith, the new update that's going to come out. Can you put it, can you talk about any like new combat features that I saw you guys mentioned there or anything like that?
You just want to know about the game. God damn it. Why am I here? No. We've got a lot of new stuff coming. There's relics that you can pick up, which is like an additional combat item with various effects. And that there's so many of them that there's too many to count. Like one of them spews lightning bolts at everyone, or one of them freezes time for a little bit. Fun little combat modifiers like that. I think we've shown off new dungeon layouts and new bosses with additional combat patterns, and we've made them a bit tougher, and there's a lot more end games, so you can go through your dungeons again with more things to do. And there's just there's lots of stuff. Like we like to say we've effectively doubled the content in the game, or doubled the length, sorry. And it's coming very soon. I'm sorry, I can't tell you a date.
Oh, that's fine. But like, dude, that's awesome. Like, for a while I've been like, okay, you beat the final boss. Like, where's the I've been waiting for like an update like this. Like now that I'm hearing new bosses and stuff, it's like, this is crazy, So like, I haven't played it since like, I don't know, since like the Halloween update or something like that. But yeah, that's good. I mean, new bosses, that makes me pumped for the game, and and I
so
really
we have a pretty big dedication to supporting this game for the long term. So we updated our roadmap in the game, I think at the start of the year, and we have relics coming soon, and then lots more content still coming for I think at least the rest of the year. So there's a lot more Lamb to come. Like we'd be silly if we didn't make more stuff because of how huge it is. Thanks to people such as yourself who have all bought it and played it and loved it. So it's very humbling to hear all that.
Oh, thank you, man. Like you guys made the game for us, and in my opinion, it's one of the best roguelikes that I've ever played. So kudos to you guys for making that game, and I actually I really love it. So that's why I'm like kind of like starstruck to meet you guys and stuff like that.
Don't be weird about it.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's a good bit of advice. If you ever meet your heroes or people that you look up to in the industry, don't be weird about it, because they're just like normal people like you. Not saying you are right now, but it's like it's a thing that I've done in the past. So yeah. Now let me PayPal you $5 for all of that positive feedback that you just gave me.
No, thank you, man. And that's all my questions. So thank you.
Cool.
All right, next.
Does
question,
anyone
Jim?
have any questions not about specifics about the game?
Oh yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So in your opinion, what has changed in the last 10 years for game development that that people that are just starting out have to be aware of, that game developers in the last 10 years didn't really have to think about?
What do game developers now have to think about that they didn't have to think about 10 years ago? If you're working in mobile or anything with analytics in it, you need to be acutely aware of privacy laws. So there's lots of things about data retention and what's considered personal data that you need to work around to make sure that you're not doing anything silly that can get you fined tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars by handling people's data incorrectly. So at one point we were looking at putting analytics into the game and then held off because like there's just a legal minefield with how you handle people's personal data. And this is a huge thing in mobile as well. So every time you play sort of like a mobile game and the first thing that comes up is like an age gate or you need to agree to our privacy policies or whatever, that's why. Because there are things like the GDPR and COPPA and a few other policies like that that I don't think were quite as prominent a decade ago. So that's definitely one. I mean, you'll always have to be conscious of just the sheer amount of games coming out all of the time, because there's a huge percentage of things that come out on Steam that just flounder and don't sell or don't go anywhere just because 10 years ago, Steam's floodgates weren't open in the same way that they were now. Game development software is more readily available to everyone than it was back then. More open source stuff, all those kinds of things. I think it's going to be a lot harder for people to stand out because gone are the days where you could just release something on Steam and then you suddenly have $1 million in your bank account. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
No worries.
I had a follow-up question for that. Let's see, where is my question? Was there anything besides like the legal stuff and just the sheer amount of games coming out that you've heard of or experienced that has made it harder or easier to get into the industry like nowadays?
No, I mean, like getting into the industry is a tough one because again, everybody has a different journey. I would say that there's probably more students than ever graduating every single year trying to get jobs, and it's incredibly competitive. And you know, there's definitely not enough jobs for everyone going around, so that's definitely going to always be a barrier. And again, that goes back to making yourself stand out really well among that crowd, I guess.
Okay, we have another question in person. Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask a question about your self-taught journey through coding. I was wondering like how long did it take for you to like learn like what you know now, as well as like how much like commitment or time commitment you put into it?
How long has it taken me to learn to program the way I can now? That one's also tricky because I haven't always just been completely focused on programming. So I always say like from the start of my career until now. But I mean, if I went all in on being a programmer all the time and not doing any design work or anything like that, it probably would have been much quicker. But I mean, everybody learns at a different rate and you're constantly learning all of the time. So, I mean, that's a factor as well. But I don't really know how to continue answering that. So you just got to work at it, I guess.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we have another in-person question.
I was wondering, as a programmer, has there been any like best practices or tricks that you've learned during your learning of how to program or actually using it in your job space?
Best practices or tricks? Not really. I mean, conforming to the way that your coworkers and your leads sort of set out the code base and any, you know, coding standards or anything is always really good. Or one time in one of my jobs, I was changing all of the braces styles in a bunch of files to be the same throughout the entire project and making sure all the formatting was the same throughout the entire project, just to make sure everything was consistent. So like doing that stuff and listening to your leads is always good. And, you know, trying to make yourself. It's always a tricky one to answer because like I because like I said, I haven't formally learned anything, so I kind of just pick up what I have needed to when I have needed to, and then go from there. Having a good mentor helped me when I worked at Millipede. I had a boss who was practically my best friend at the company, who helped me learn stuff, and sort of understanding structure, I think, is a good one to know, rather than just, you know, writing code and hoping that it works, and understanding that sometimes there needs to be like a design to things rather than just writing a 3,000 line long class that encapsulates everything that you need in that one place. So separating things out and having separation of concerns and, you know, things like that, and abstractions always good. That's what I think anyway.
Do we have any online questions by any chance, Jasmine?
Not that I'm seeing, but I always
Question.
have like a million questions.
Wait, I have a question though.
Yeah, go ahead.
So William, I know you've done a lot of stuff for UI, so I was just gonna ask, can you give us like a quick process into how you design UI from start to finish?
Yep. So for me, it's about understanding what we need to do with the screen and sort of going from there, right? So understanding what we need to do, and then essentially trying to come up with some kind of really basic layout, presenting it to someone, understanding the needs of the screen, and going from there. Then you sort of try and work in like, okay, I like to do accessibility stuff. How do we make this screen accessible? How do we make this screen function with both a keyboard, a mouse, and a controller? And how you can switch between those things without breaking continuity or making it harder for the person to interact with it. So one of the sort of design pillars that I have for making UI is that, like, you should never have to go into the settings menu to say, oh, I'm using a controller now. You should just be able to pick it up and press a button and everything switches over, and you can use the screen as is from that point. And then trying to, I guess, find a balance between making it look really nice and function really well, to get things, you know, fewer clicks, or does this information make sense? So for a really long time, the skill tree for Cult of the Lamb was this cool, like, almost like triangular thing that was supposed to be like a cool symbol with all the nodes along it, but it just really didn't work with the kind of systems that we needed in place. So like, if you've all played it, you know, we have tiers of the different buildings that you can unlock, and that didn't really work with the kind of layout that we were trying to go for. So it was a matter of trying to do, you know, rule of cool over it actually being functional. So taking that into account, and then really just going ahead and building it and seeing if it works. And for that, I think you need a pretty robust system to do that stuff. So we have quite a bit of custom code built on top of Unity's UI navigation and buttons and all these sorts of things that we needed, because I think Unity's default implementation is a bit shit. So we do that, and we can make things very fast, and then you just repeat that process over and over again until you land on something that works really well, and just, you know, constantly iterate. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're just running out of time. So we just want to respect your time. So it's like,
That's all right. I can talk for a little bit longer if you want to. We did start a little bit late, so.
oh yeah, maybe we could have time for like another question, maybe. Do we have any questions online or any questions in person?
Any?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. As someone interested in like working more in UI, I'm a graphic design major. What kind of projects should I be focusing on for my portfolio to start moving towards a game UI?
So what sort of projects you should be focusing on towards moving to game UI?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I would probably recommend, honestly, if you're not working with a bunch of people to make like a game or something and learning how to do it that way, you could probably just pick up Unity and make like a portfolio project or something, and build a bunch of menus. I know that's probably what I would do if I wasn't actively working. like I mentioned before, I'm very lucky in that I've just always been working since university. I've never really had to stop and make a portfolio piece before. So honestly, if you just picked up Unity and started making something and started learning how to build UI in that and how it fits together within a games context, how to, you know, build your textures and lay things out and do responsive layouts in games, I think that would be really valuable.
Okay,
So
thank you.
just like, I don't know, pick a cool theme, make some interface.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, guys?
If there's nothing else in person, I have yet again another question.
Go for it.
You talked about how you went into university for design. Was it for like game related stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had like a portfolio to get into that. So I was wondering if like the game industry was always something that you wanted to do, like from the very beginning, like since like forever.
Yeah. So for me, I think my brother, when I was like 6 or 7 or something, actually can't remember how old I was, but my brother got us Pokemon Red on an emulator, and that was it. I kind of decided from that moment that this is what I wanted to do. And I'm one of those people who doesn't compromise on the things that I want to do in my life. So yeah, it has kind of been a lifelong dream of mine, to the point where like when I was in primary school, my best friend and I would get sheets of paper, cut them in half, fold them up, and like staple them together and make fake PlayStation 1 instruction booklets for fake video games that we made up. So I was big into like Final Fantasy and stuff when I was a kid. So we would make up fake JRPGs and make the instruction books for them because we didn't actually know how to make games at that point. So yeah, that was always fun.
It's nice to know that you were a nerd from the very beginning.
Oh yeah. Some of the things behind me I've had since I was like 10. So
Oh, I have a
Thank
question.
you.
Can I get a top 3 of your all-time favorite games?
oh, this is gonna be easy. So my 1 is The Last of Us Part 2. My number 2 is The Last of Us Part 1. And my number 3 is, that one's tricky because I've got a lot of favorite games. It's probably going to be Mass Effect, the first one, just because I love science fiction. So yeah, it's not the most exciting list because 2 of them are from the same series.
And maybe a bit of a follow-up on that question. Any game genres you're currently excited about that you're enjoying and that you're excited where they're going? Maybe roguelikes, real-time strategy. What excites you right now in the industry?
Nothing really in particular. I mean, I play just about everything except for fighting games and racing games. So I'm all about like things with a strong narrative. They're sort of my favorite things, which is probably why The Last of Us sits up there for me. I like something that can sort of suck me in and I have this experience that's really character driven and makes you sort of use your brain a little bit more about the experiences that sort of the cast of the games go through, instead of just, oh, I'm going to go shoot some monsters and then the game ends kind of thing. So
Anyone else got any questions?
I want to ask, what do you think? What is your plan for your own future, and what are you thinking about doing from now on?
So yeah, for me, my own future, I mean, I'm going to work for Massive Monster for as long as they'll put up with me, because we make some really cool games and I'm very attached to Call of the Lamb. So I'm going to be doing that. But outside of that, I'm building a set of Unity tools that I'm going to be distributing on the App Store, not the App Store, the Asset Store, sometime throughout this year. So we, for the longest time, our cheat console in the game doesn't necessarily fulfill the kind of requirements that we need it to. So we can't really use our cheats on console or anything. So I've been building this crazy custom command console for Unity, where you can just sort of decorate a function with a property no, probably an attribute, and it'll just automatically feed it into this registry. So you can just like type in a command anywhere without having to really do much effort, and then pick up a controller and navigate a menu to execute commands and all that sort of stuff. And I have a couple of indie developers signed on for that, testing it out for me before I release it. So that's kind of like my trajectory at the moment. I would love to build my own game again, but it's just one of those things where now that I've had a taste for bigger console games, I don't think I can do one of those by myself. So yeah, who knows? Who knows what the future will be? Like, I didn't think I would be here 5 years ago. So maybe in the next 5 years, something else crazy will come along. But I think I've kind of peaked on how popular the games that I've worked on has. So I'm looking at a question from the chat, which is, how would you set up a portfolio for something less visual like programming? So I'll link my portfolio in the chat. And honestly, I would just make it really clear that you are a programmer, and the stuff that's visually appealing on your portfolio is not necessarily the things that you did, and make it very, very clear that I did these things. So my portfolio is very, very graphic and basically just has lots of screenshots of the games that I've worked on. And I just make it very clear that I'm a programmer. This is the stuff that I did. This is the tech that we used. So yeah, it's a bit tricky because you want it to stand out, but you don't want to have code dumps or anything. I know people like to have GitHub pages actively available for folks to look at so they can see your code. I've never done that, so I can't really speak to how useful that is for hiring for a programming job. Maybe it is. You could try that. I'm not really sure. But yeah, the earlier stuff, just make it very clear about what it is that you worked on. Do we have any more?
Yeah, one more.
Yeah.
This is just a question for the club, but will you guys be posting the portfolio on the Discord so we can?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, yeah. You do it.
Okay, so I think we're out of questions, Will.
Cool.
So I think that was it for today. We are extremely thankful with you for sharing your time, your experience. This is invaluable to us. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I hope this can help the club and everyone here learn about what it's like to be in the games industry, and they can pursue a happy and a joyful career just like you did. So thank you for your experience. Everyone, give him a huge round of applause, please.
It was good to be here. I hope some of what I've talked about is going to help all of you have a long and fruitful career making video games. So, yeah. If I had just like one, I guess some closing words to say is that, again, make sure that your work stands out above the crowd. Be nice to people. Don't be an asshole. Like, because people remember. And that will have a huge impact on your ability to actually work with folks. You know, be a part of a community. Don't see other people working in games as a rung on a ladder to climb, because, you know, one day someone that you've talked to and knew 10 years ago might be someone high up now who can help you out. But if you're just treating them as that and not actually just like a connection or a friend or some kind of more personal manner, then, you know, it's not going to be the same. So, you know, I have met people a decade ago who, you know, went on to make Unpacking and other high profile games. So you never know who you're talking to is going to be like huge one day and can help you out. So don't be a prick. Be nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Will. And we'll be uploading this to YouTube if we have your permission, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Thank you all so much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care. Give it
Bye.
up.